everyone, Nintendo Boy 17 here. So here's my second in the re-review series with Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy. As you can see, the original video is kind of embarrassing, as all I did back in the day is, well, hide my face. I review it by just showing the box art in front of a camera and not much else. Like I said in my episode 1 Racer video, which ended up being my first in this series, while time has passed and I learned more about video capture without much use of a camera, I decided to go back and revisit it, keep in mind some other things that may or may not have changed in that time. That said, hope you enjoy the video. 2003, in junior high school, and reading things like ads for game stores like Game Crazy, and in magazines like Nintendo Power and Game Informer, I catch the eye of a game called Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy, which looked to me like a platformer, but what fascinated me was the ancient Egyptian setting. However, I would not play the game until 2010, and late to the game, I would get my own PlayStation 2, even though I already had a GameCube where I could have gotten it there first, and found the game in a pawn shop alongside The Hobbit. What I never expected, though, was not just a platformer, it was a Zelda clone, and I fell in love with it as it also felt unique from Zelda in some ways as well. And knowing that it just didn't sell well, I recognized I had a gem in my hands. So taking my love for this IP I thought was lost at the time, I ended up rebuying it on the GameCube this time when I was at a comic convention in 2016, yeah, screw that year, and it was almost a year later I would learn that Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy, after being gone for so long, would finally get a re-release on PC, which I bought day one. And in 2019, a re-release for the Switch would also come out with the Xbox version backwards compatible on Xbox One. And yes, I would get those too. But enough reminiscing. How does this game hold after so long? Let's find out. Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy is set in a fantastical take on ancient Egypt, focusing on two characters, Sphinx and Prince Tutankhamun, or Tut for short. One day, Sphinx and his rival Horus were sent by their mentor Imhotep to the hellish lands of Uruk, which is not Egyptian, but okay, to extract the sword of Osiris, but where Horus failed to the point of possibly being dead, Sphinx succeeds. As for Tutankhamun, the poor guy has perhaps the worst birthday as he was investigating what was going on in his family palace, only for it to be set up by someone disguised as his brother, and for that to be in reality the dark chaotic Set, as Tut forcibly undergoes a mummification ritual right in front of his fiancée Nefertiti. Sphinx conveniently was in the temple Tut was in after he escaped Uruk, only to leave poor Tutankhamun in his mummified state. Not all is lost though, as parts of Tutankhamun's soul have been stored in canopic jars, which is found by Sphinx and when woken up was used to sneak around Castle Uruk. To that, the mummy and demigod must unite to restore Egypt's future ruler and stop the dark god, Set. Simple, and it works for the most part, but here we are again with the decades-long cliffhanger unsorted. Like the last game I reviewed this year. Oh, this better not be a theme. Moving on to the gameplay, and it pretty much varies on the two characters. Sphinx is, as I said, similar to how Link plays in a pre-Breath of the Wild Zelda title. He has his basic sword attack, he has his shield, and he even has a projectile tool. But unlike the slingshot or bow, the bow pipe isn't used for combat, but more a focus on puzzles. From hitting needed switches to freezing enemies and using them as blocks, even melting chains with corrosives and bouncing against walls for a hard-to-reach switch. And while like Link, Sphinx will explore Egypt, primarily between the thriving city of Abydos and the desolate city of Heliopolis, the formula with the dungeons is handled differently. They're still there to explore, but however, they don't often see the boss and or artifact in the end. Rather, those represent the end of the chapter in another part of the world. Sphinx also has a jump maneuver, which is more manual than what you would find in the Zelda games, as those only have Link jump over the edge automatically, which makes Sphinx add a little more platforming to his side of the gameplay. And yes, it can be used for combat purposes with his swordplay. In addition, Sphinx also has a capture beetle mechanic, in where using magical beetles after he beats up enemies well enough, he can capture them. Two of those creatures he'll use as his torch and his bombs, while the rest are just used for a side quest at a museum. Adding dashes of two other Nintendo games, Pokemon and Animal Crossing, now that I think about it, but I digress. Tutankhamun, meanwhile, has no combat skills, and instead relies on his undead status to help him sneak around Castle Uruk and solve more puzzles. Having the ability to get lit on fire to light torches, get zapped by electricity to activate power pylons, get cloned by being cut up, shape-shift into a flying creature, and even utilizing the invisibility stone that would otherwise kill anyone else. Arguably, the most frustrating thing comes from Tut's side. Putting aside his lack of combat, the stealth can be a huge case of trial and error in the middle. Your invisibility stone won't let you move, and when you sneak, it can get real easy to get caught by the security details in the castle. As for Sphinx, well, he lacks some useful tricks like strafing, his aiming with the blowpipe is a little stiff, and controlling the capture beetle can be annoying being the same controls as your camera, but nothing unbearable. Just your standard Zelda-like gameplay with platforming. Either character you play, the controls, whether you play it with the traditional layout or with the GameCube layout, work pretty well. Though I don't recommend playing the PC version with the keyboard and mouse because of how much of a cluster it is. Grab a USB controller and you're good to go. On to the visuals, and for a game straight from 2003, by the gods, this game is still gorgeous, even on the PlayStation 2, which was the weakest console of its time. Eurocom put a lot of work into the art style and details, especially with the lighting. It looks even cleaner with the GameCube and Xbox versions, both of which I played via backwards compatibility on the Wii and Xbox One, respectively. And yeah, the Xbox version just edges it out with the GameCube follow-up. Meanwhile, let's discuss the ports for PC and Switch, and I'm going to be as lenient as possible as this port is worked on by one person under the name Switter. And while it's still pretty, it is missing some effects. In fact, being there for the PC version day one, I remember it missing some waterfall effects and the like. But Switter has since fixed that. What is still missing, however, are some shadows. In addition to that, on the technical side of things, I've had a couple crashes, but again, given this is the work of one person, this is nothing short of impressive, given he is the sole person keeping this game alive. Speaking of bugs, Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy, when it initially launched in North America, there was a serious one where if you save in the middle of one segment before entering the door, if you reload said save, it won't open, permanently blocking you from finishing the game. Even back to my days playing this for the first time, luckily I never got this bug, only learned about it through research. But out of curiosity, knowing that said bug was patched already on the Switch and PC versions due to those being based on the PAL versions rather than the NTSC releases, I tested it out on the Xbox version via backwards compatibility on Xbox One, and was surprised to find out that the backwards compatibility team at Xbox fixed that bug. Man, Xbox emulation team was something else. Too bad they ended it. Anyway, that leaves the sound design, and perhaps the best of it comes from its original soundtrack by composer Steve Duckworth. It combines Western music genres with the Egyptian influence. Like, for instance, I hear some catchy orchestrated jazz while Tut is flying in his bat flute, while Sphinx has what sounds like a Western orchestra and choir with said Egyptian instruments as he fights bosses. Fittingly, this game comes from the same gen as Stuart Chatwood's soundtrack for Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, where he in particular blended Persian music with some rock and roll, and it's just as epic sounding. Overall, Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy still remains one of my favorite games of all time, one I love to replay when I get the chance, and it makes me so happy to see it re-released several times over, and said re-releases between PC, Switch, and the backwards compatible Xbox version for one in series are perhaps the ones to go for more so than the PS2 and GameCube versions these days, due in part to the work put in to fix some serious problems. Check it out, it's a must.